without further ado, thank you once again for joining Huddle, our very last one. And I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, Nicola Westlake.
Hello, thank you all for coming. I'll just share the screen. Okay, so yeah, what this is all about really is a bit about my practice and also trees that can be found in Plymouth, in the kind of inner city Plymouth. So the trees that you can find if you go into Central Park in Plymouth, so you don't have to go too far afield. What it is, they're put on a more interesting slide for you to see there. So they're kind of more the trees that can be found in an old in a Druid calendar, which was also an alphabet. And so I just move all the pictures out the way, everyone's images there, so I can see the bottom. Yes, so the trees are found in a Druid calendar called the Oam. I believe that's how it's pronounced. When I was doing my master's, I was studying illustration and got really into photography, and I was interested in kind of connecting people with nature and thinking, well, how do I go about doing that? And I thought trees, you kind of walk past them all the time, and people just don't really, a lot of people don't, I'm not saying everybody doesn't notice them, but a lot of people just walk past them and you don't really kind of see them, and I thought, well, they're, beautiful things. And I got really interested in because it was lockdown, I was walking in Central Park, just to get out of the house and everything. And they kind of really resonated with me at that time. And I started to photograph them, and I found a different way of kind of photographing trees through a technique that I kind of developed myself, kind of similar to a pinhole photography effect, really, which I'll go in a bit more detail in a minute. But what I'll keep going back to is this calendar, and it has 20 trees. They're not all trees, some are plants, and so for each month there's a tree ascribed to the month, and it's not the same month cycle as how we look at it as well now in our calendar cycle. But I'll explain a bit more about that as well. And I just found that really interesting as a different way of looking at time as well, like cyclical time rather than linear time, and it just all become very interesting to me. So I designed a calendar that was based on these 20 trees that are in the OM calendar, and a riddle for each tree based on the mythology that's attributed to each tree as well, which I'll go into more detail with too. But just to give you a little overview, what I was going to do as well was actually I was going to film this actually with me in Central Park, going around and showing you the trees that I'm talking about. And also these are the trees I'm going to be talking about are more assigned to Christmas or to Yuletide. So I'm going to concentrate more on them rather than the 20 trees, because we'd be here all day otherwise. And I thought that would be more of a themed thing to look at, because it's that time of year as well. So I'm going to be concentrating on trees and plants and telling you a bit about the mythology that's in the symbolism that relates to those trees. So yeah, I was going to film it in Central Park, going around with my phone on a selfie stick and stand next to each, some of the interesting trees that you can find in Central Park. But I tried a run through doing that a few weeks ago, and it was just an impossible task, because I kept getting dogs running up to me barking, and I just couldn't do it. And I just realized, I thought, well, what if Zoom goes, what if my internet's not very stable? What if it's a day like this where it's really, really freezing and icy and I'll just be slipping about all over the place? So I'm glad I put this together instead, but I do apologize that it's not exactly a walk as such. But what I would like to do in the future is take people on walks if they were interested, to look at the trees in Central Park and explain the mythology of them. And we could, draw and photograph them, and maybe, even do like a bit of meditation as well, because there's such amazing ways that you can connect with the trees, and also, it does your mental health a world of good as well. So anyway, this slide here, this is what I was trying to get at in my art. And it's a photograph Earthrise, which was taken. Sorry about my notes at the bottom of the screen. I can't seem to share the screen where I can just see the notes and you can see the slides. So I do apologize. So they're written really just so that I can read them. I know their spelling's atrocious and everything because I didn't think you'd be able to see it. So, but anyway, so it was taken from the moon, this image, on Christmas Eve in 1968 by William Anders during the Apollo 8 mission. And it's been classed as one of the most influential environmental photographs ever taken. It shows the beauty and vulnerability of Earth as a separate entity that moves around in the universe. He was moved to tears when he took the photo. It made him think that if he could somehow create images. Oh no, sorry. So he was moved to tears, and so I'm kind of inspired by that. That trying to make an image like to somehow connect the viewer with nature, that would kind of produce that kind of sense of wonder at nature as well. And so I've developed a technique where I cut out a little square, as you can see on the left here, from a drinks can. So it's just a little piece of aluminium cut out from a drinks can. And then I just pierce it with a pin, and then just put that over the lens of my camera phone. And then you can see on the right, there's an image of an alder tree, and that was produced in this way. So just, or that was actually produced with a piece of tin foil with a hole in it, and then it kind of split a little bit further along. So there's this on to the left at the top, in the top left corner of this image, you can see there's another little bit of image there. So that's because the tin foil are kind of producing a little hole there as well. And then when I kind of play around with that, either in Photoshop or just on an ordinary app that's on, that comes with your camera phone, you can really bring out the colors, and you get this black background. And it kind of reminds me of little universes in their own way as well, and it just really focuses in on the tree and the saturated color. And I was trying to bring out the mythology of each of the trees I was photographing as well. And alder is kind of associated more with fire, and when you look at the mythology of it, so that was bringing out the yellows and the reds and that. So that's what I was doing there. Yeah, I have also picked photographic paper and drinks cans, and done, practice the usual pinhole photography technique as well, and left them hanging from trees, and underneath trees in the park, and then come and collected them at my allotment as well, and also just pointing at a tree for a few seconds and then covering over the hole again and actually processing it in the usual manner, with chemicals and everything. But what I like about this digital effect is it's just really easy to do. You don't need any chemicals or anything either, when it's just instantaneous. So you can just take it and play around with it and it's done. You don't have to take it to fix it and develop it and all that kind of thing. So yeah. This is one of the images. This is a actual pinhole image that was taking up my allotment, and you can just you can make out a little bit of some kind of bushes in the background there, but the actual lines in the sky are the lines of where the sun has transitioned across the sky, and it's probably moved about a bit because it's just been kind of up my allotment under a bush. But you can see the lines of the sun, and they move higher in the sky when the sun is higher when it's the summer, and then come down lower when it's more towards winter. And I just find that really interesting as well, that kind of imagery. So I'm always kind of creating images to do with that as well. So anyway, so yeah, this is one of the pages of the calendar that I've made, and this is the 21st of, so this corresponds to the 21st of December, the winter solstice, year's end, and it's the yew tree. So earlier alphabets were used for divination and magic, and they were also powerful sets of ideas and concepts. And the actual Druid calendar, it was an alphabet as well as, so it was considered an alphabet as well as a calendar, really. So there's a lot of research that's going on into it still. So it's quite vague as to, you know, the what it actually was, but it did have runes attached to each month as well, so if you like. And so I try to incorporate that into this calendar with a riddle about the mythology of each one as well. So that's just a page there just to show you that. So oak as well. So it's a page on there, which I'll show you a bit more in detail later. I just thought I'd just show you this anyway. Yes, so cyclical time. Yeah, and the book one is 24th of December to the 12th of May, and it runs in order of birch, rowan, ash, alder, willow, and then 13th of May to 1st of September, hawthorn, oak, holly, hazel, and apple. So these are what were in the Druid calendar. I've made a slight interpretation on Scots pine, because the tree that was attributed to that cycle wasn't really found in the British Isles. So, but Scots pine was. So I just changed it to that. Like doing some research, and that was what was thought to be the substitute anyway. So okay. And then the bramble, ivy, wheat straw, blackthorn, and elder. And then there's the vowels, the equinoxes. So you've got Scots pine, gorse, heather, white poplar, and yew. And then these are kind of like the runes that are attached to those cycles as well. And I just kind of photographed the book outside under trees as well. And also, I've got really into making film as well, by kind of like pinhole film. So I've made a piece of aluminium with a hole in it over a lens, and tried filming through my phone that way as well, and put together some short video of walking underneath trees especially when it was late summer under chestnut trees, you get some amazing shadows. If you've ever experienced that, you know what I mean. It's crazy. It's like really kaleidoscopic, and I never really noticed it before until I started to get really interested in trees. And yeah, and I think it's really what I'm really interested in as well is forest bathing, how walking under trees and experiencing just the connecting with those trees, walking underneath them and seeing the shadows and the light shining through, how that can really, and there has been some real positive scientific research into that, how that is really beneficial to people to do that and for their mental health. And it really lowers the blood pressure and yeah, so I'm really interested in that as well. So the winter solstice derives from the Latin word meaning stop or to stand still. Winter solstice, about the December the 22nd, the sun is overhead at noon at the Tropic of Capricorn. This marks the beginning of winter in the northern hemisphere. For several days before and after each solstice, the sun appears to stand still in the sky. Its noontime elevation does not seem to change from day to day. To the ancients, it appeared as if the sun and moon stopped in their flight across the sky. So it must have seemed really quite strange to them. It must have been, are we going to get the sun back? Is quite a scary time really, because if we don't get the sun back, we've got no warmth, we don't have any crops. So the winter solstice, this is the longest night of the year and was a time of both anticipation and rejoicing at the sun's rebirth out of the goddess. So I just find that really fascinating as well, that time, that stillness, how it does seem like that as well, that period of time, how things just seem to just stand still. And I got really interested in the mythology of Christmas and Yuletide, and where Father Christmas possibly may have originated from Odin, in the Norse myths, because there used to be like a battle, a Norse battle where he was fighting in the sky, and then he was kind of but he used to give out gifts apparently as well to children. So you can see all these. There's so many different ones. You could talk forever about that as well, about the origins. But it's really interesting, that side of it. And so I'm going to talk a bit about start talking more about the mythology of the trees that are related to Christmas and Yuletide now. And talking again about the winter solstice, the holly and oak king. So what's meant to happen is the oak king takes over from the holly king at that time, and then resides until the summer solstice, when the holly king regains his power, and the oak king kind of loses his power. There's a lot of mythology related to that as well. But the oak, in the tree calendar, the Druid tree calendar I keep talking about, oak means door. Basically, it translates as door, and it is in the calendar. It is June the 10th to July the 7th, and it symbolizes stubborn staying power. And you think like a tiny acorn grows into a huge tree and can live up to 1,000 years, prone to lightning strikes, which gives it a reputation for divinity. And it's just a tree that it spreads as if with open arms. It's a tree that has got so much habitat living in it, and it can just hold loads of insects and loads of creatures. And in the Golden Bough, the book The Golden Bough, the human sacrifice of forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Nemai, on Midsummer's Day, is the fuel of the fires is always oak. The fire of Vesta in Rome was fueled by oak. Yule log is kept to kindle the next year's winter solstice fire, and traditional Yule logs come from oak, birch, or fruit trees to symbolize rebirth and fertility. Holly, the Holly in so back to the Holly and Oak Kings. They rule the solstices, and they are personifications of winter and summer in various folklore and mythological traditions. The two kings engage in endless battle, reflecting the seasonal cycles of the year, not only solar light and dark, but also crop renewal and growth. During warm days of midsummer, the Oak King is at the height of his strength. The Holly King, and then the Oak King is reborn, regaining power at the spring equinox and perpetuating the succession. It is the only evergreen leafy tree of Northwest Europe, and it remains, it's not resistant to hard frosts and thrives in wooded pastures. And holly trees, they can live. So that's what I was talking about there, holly tree. They can live for a very long time. And the berries are an important bird food, but the berries are poisonous for humans, but the leaves are known for their healing properties. Bach flower remedy relates to all-encompassing love, and it is for those who have disconnected themselves and have feelings of jealousy, envy, or hatred, or do not feel anything anymore. Holly opens the heart. Christian esoterics see the crucifixion as a physical representation of divine love. And owing to its prickly leaves, 4-lobed flowers, they mirror the 4 points of the cross and blood red berries, which is why the holly has been frequently associated with Christ. And a widespread country belief in the British Isles regard holly as the embodiment of the male forces of nature and ivy of the female. So that's where you get the holly and ivy association with Christmas as well. Mistletoe. Now, I've not found any mistletoe in Central Park, but I guess that there are quite a few oak trees there, so there probably is some somewhere there. And I've not got it in it's not in the calendar, but some people that have made similar calendars have put it into theirs. And it is very important to do with druids anyway. I mean, so because it was very, very sacred to them, and it was the time, according to bardic tradition, when the chief druid would cut the sacred mistletoe from the oak, because mistletoe doesn't usually grow on oak trees. It's very rare. So if it does, then it's considered to be extremely sacred, because it usually grows on apple trees. The mistletoe was cut using a golden sickle on the 6th night of the new moon after the winter solstice. So it was very particular dates. And a cloth held beneath a tree by other members of the order was where to catch the sprigs of mistletoe as they fell, as it was believed that it would have profaned the mistletoe to fall upon the ground. He would then divide the branches into many sprigs and distributed them to people who hung them over doorways as protection against thunder, lightning, and other evils. The Druids thought that the berries in the mistletoe represented the sperm of the gods, which is kind of why mistletoe is never really put into churches, because that's kind of been remembered, and it's just very pagan kind of, and it would Christianity wouldn't have wanted that associated with Christianity, basically, because yeah. So mistletoe is considered a magical aphrodisiac, and in old folklore it's called orchio, which is used in folk medicine to cure many ills. And yeah, but it is highly toxic when ingested. So just to say about that, in case anybody was going to go and pick some or something. Okay, yew trees. The yew tree, you're probably thinking, what's a yew tree got to do with Christmas? And that's like the time of the season. But in the OAM, it is attributed to the winter solstice, which is the 5th vowel in the OAM, and it is the 21st of December. Sylvia Plath, she said, I can't see my thing now because my notes are gone that way. Yeah, she said, she wrote, the moon and the yew, the message of the yew tree is blackness and silence. It's talked about as a death tree in all European countries, sacred to Hecate in Greece, Italy, and Rome. In an Irish romance, yew stakes were driven through the corpses of two lovers to keep them apart, but the stakes sprouted and become trees that grew towards each other and eventually embraced. They can resurrect from complete decay, and they can renew themselves from outside in. There is no biological reason for them to die, and they can virtually live forever. But each part is poisonous apart from the red anvils. However, yew trees contain Taxol, which was found to be effective in treating various cancers and has been looked into being made synthetically. Yeah, spiritually, many churchyards are built on older sacred sites, were sacred centers of tribal territories, and they were consciously planted by people, and are also found planted north of ancient burial mounds at Newgrange and Stonehenge. Anglo-Saxons did the same, but mainly on the south sides. All Germanic tribes had lore based around the yew, and a rune was dedicated to the yew, representing death and rebirth. And also, in Norse mythology, Yggdrasil, which I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong again, the tree, the world tree, is thought, which they usually think is thought to be the ash tree, where Odin hung upside down on it, in Norse mythology, to gain like the wisdom of the world. However, there is a lot of research into whether it should be a yew tree rather than the ash tree. Yeah, so that's quite interesting to think about, because the reason that is because it has been the world tree has been described as an evergreen, and the yew and ash isn't an evergreen, but the yew tree is, and yew tree is such a symbolic tree in so much mythology that you do wonder whether that could be a possibility. But anyway, yeah, you would, just a little bit about tree itself. You would made nails for Viking ships, and it is the gentle guardian of the dead. Mephilitic sites are usually of stone, but some yew trees are living beings of equal age. The yew tree found in Wales at Discoed, was already 400 years old when the stones were on their way to Stonehenge passed by it. Ooh. Before Christianity, death was perceived as a transition in the long life. For ancients, the boundary between the worlds of the dead and the living was a meeting point of the worlds. So you represents the unity of life and death. Yeah. So even though it's kind of considered this death tree, the way we used to think about death was different to how we think about it now. It was kind of, you were going someplace else. It was a between tree, between the invisible barrier between this world and the next. So if you look at it that way, then it's not necessarily a death tree. It's a tree between the two worlds. So it can, it's a beginning as well as the end, which is quite a beautiful way of looking at it. These images here, they're all images that I've kind of taken of trees that are in Central Park. Just to let you know, these are the trees that are in Ford Park Cemetery, which is at the bottom of Central Park. And I took that on the way home from work one night, and they just look really quite, they're quite striking, sort of standing out there. And then the one to the left as well, that's also in there. A little small one. Yeah, and the next image as well is a digital pinhole that I took. Yeah, that is a digital pinhole that was taken on an old analog camera that I then developed. So it was just, I've just put a piece of metal over the lens with a hole in it. And it comes up really, really tiny. So you have to kind of blow it up a bit. But that's what the kind of effect you get when you blow that up. And then we have another image there that I've taken, which is of a rowan tree in Central Park as well. Okay, Scots pine, which symbolizes the rebirth of the year. The pine tree seems to listen, to wait for, and without impatience. It's evergreen. It's the return of light. It points to new paths, and is the sort of kind of symbolizes the return of, as the sun begins to move again after the 3-day standstill at the winter solstice. And I think it relates to, I'll just find in my book here, the 25th of, yeah, so to the 25th when it's meant to start moving again. Dionysus is depicted carrying a staff topped with a pine cone. Priests would light the cones atop the staff at night, and fire torches of processions wound up hillsides to temples. They were ancient way markers, so they used to grow Scots pine trees as a way to indicate, before we had signs in roads and stuff like that, you'd look out for a Scots pine when you were going towards a new city or new village. So they would tend to grow them on top of hillsides, and they can grow quite tall. There's one in Central Park, which I couldn't believe. Actually found one in Central Park, and yeah, so I took some photographs of that one. I was really searching for one in Plymouth, and I was told, no, you're not going to find one. But then I was part of being a tree warden, and I spoke to one of the main sort of tree warden people, and he sent me a message saying, I found it. And it was really cool because he told me, like, find the oak tree in, there's an oak tree in the particular part of the park, and then 2 down from there, and turn left at a pine tree, and then you'll see it there. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it was kind of like a proper tree map, way of telling me where it was. And they've got beautiful red oaks, as you can see in the middle image there. And yeah, it's just really fascinating to think of them as ancient way markers. Yeah, they symbolize an everlasting force of life. They stand up to the severity of elements and thrive regardless of them. And pine trees are the most dominant, one of the most dominant tree species since the Ice Age. In the Golden Bough, another witching time is a period between Christmas and Epiphany. Hence, in some parts of Silesia, the people burn pine resin all night long before Christmas and New Year in order that the pungent smoke may drive witches and evil spirits far away from the home and homestead. Incense made from pine needles, resin or oil will purify a space and banish any negativity that's lurking there. The same can be achieved by burning a handful of pine needles or cones. Yeah, so there's that one. Coming to the end of it now as well, so so there'll be time for questions and everything. Ivy. So its flowering season is the 30th of September to the 27th of October. It represents femininity, so it's kind of the holly and ivy thing. The holly is a male, a masculine attributes to masculinity, and ivy is considered to be attributed to femininity. And light and dark, the holly and ivy. So it's the 11th tree in the Ogham. How did it become associated with Christmas? Holly and ivy are often linked together at Christmas. This goes back to the idea of the holly male and ivy female being burnt together at the pagan festival of Beltane. Ivy, like holly, is an important evergreen plant species in UK woodland. Ivy was sacred to Osiris as well as Dionysus. Vine and ivy come next to each other at the turn of the year and are jointly dedicated to resurrection, presumably because they are the only two trees that grow spirally in the tree calendar. The vine also symbolizes resurrection because its strength is preserved in the wine. Yeah, and they used to decorate, Roman temples used to be decorated with ivy, and which the Christian church reluctantly transferred to the calendar for Christmas, with the words temple ornatal and ornanta, let the temple be decorated. In ancient Egypt, ivy was dedicated to the lord of vegetation, Osiris. Similarly, along with the vine, it was sacred to the most wildest and most ecstatic of the Greek vegetation gods, Dionysus. Yeah, so, and then elder as well. I'm talking about elder as well because it's at the part of the calendar, November the 25th to the 22nd of December. It's an interesting tree. I just thought I'd show you this as well because it's every part of it is meant to be really healing. The berries are rich in vitamins and can strengthen the immune system. The bark, root, leaves, flowers, and fruits are all beneficial. Yeah, and it's in Northern Europe. It's attributed to the great goddess Holla. She appears in the fairy tale Frau Holl, and also is meant to be really, really preventative against flu. And it's interesting how when we had COVID and stuff like that, I think, you could really kind of research more. We could research more into trees as well, and all the beneficial things that they can do for us, but then not just, you know, think about what they can do for us, but like a two-way thing as well. What we, you know, we need to respect them more as well, and like a, you know, they give so much, and yeah, so I really think that's really important. So yeah, that's the end of my presentation. So shall I stop sharing now?
Yes,
Let me
please,
see.
Nicola, that would be great. And we can open up the
Cool.
floor if anyone's got any questions.
No problem.
Thank you so much. Your images are so beautiful. I'm amazed that they have just been created on a phone. They look so fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's quite it's a really basic technique really, and yeah, it's so you can get some amazing images, and they do also kind of, they're not, you know, they're quite high definition as well, so you can make them go quite big, so you can blow them up to almost like poster size. So yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. I've had some lovely comments coming in the chat whilst you were speaking, Nicola. So it sounds like there is a general consensus that everyone is very interested to go on some walks with you. So I think that's definitely something that you could do.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
And Frances has said about how she loved the progression from the Earth's sphere to the process in your research, and how it's focused on your immediate area. It's inspiring the way that you have drawn on the Ogham calendar, mythology, and very exquisite images, she said.
Oh, thank you.
And she also said about how much she loves yews, and the bleeding yew at Narberth Church in Pembrokeshire is apparently not so far away from the area where the bluestones were transported. So yeah, it's amazing how all these things kind of eventually tie up and come together in the same stories.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Wonderful. Did anybody else have any questions for Nicola or any comments about her presentation? Anything that they'd like to share? Yes, great. Yeah, I've got Jane. I've got is it A as well? Sorry, your first name isn't there.
If I could go first, it's the presentation was absolutely lovely. Thank you so much. It was really, really interesting, and I agree, the images are wonderful. It's not a question so much as a comment which people might know. Two things. One, first of all, if you adore trees, the book Overstory by Richard Powers, if you've not read it, it is absolutely incredible and just made my understanding of trees just way richer. It's an incredible book. And also tomorrow at Plymouth Arts Cinema, if you don't know, there's a screening of a film called Felling, which is about Sheffield's attempts to save its trees, and it's being filmed in accordance with Straw, which is the group that are fighting to save the trees in Armada Way. So at Plymouth Arts Cinema tomorrow at 7, there's a screening there.
Oh, lovely. Oh, thank you. Yeah,
that's great. For all tree lovers, because I totally agree with you. Some of the amazing trees hidden, you know, not hidden, but so easily overlooked in Plymouth city centre, in the parks, all around. They're just wonderful things, and anything that helps us understand them more is wonderful. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your comments.
Great. We had another question.
Hello. Can I speak?
Yes, please do. We can hear you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was going to mention straw and just kind of ask. Well, I've got like three things and maybe a bit of self-publicizing because I'm doing some yarn bombing with straw, and we're meeting at the plots at 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Just knitting everything together because we're going to yarn bomb all the trees on Armada Way soon, if anyone wants to join us. So I was going to ask if, with the ivy and the holly, which the light and the dark is.
Oh, yeah.
Quite interested.
Yeah. I think it is the light and the dark. The holly is the dark, and the ivy is the
I think
light.
it's the light. I thought it might be
Yeah, because it's striving towards, the ivy strives towards light, which is why it's classed as being a nuisance, you know, like clinging onto everything and that, but doesn't necessarily kill its host, which some people think it does. Yeah, so it's always trying to it's like class is very determined, trying to get towards the light. And holly can grow in quite shaded woodland, so yeah, and holly's kind of classed as more masculine, and the ivy feminine as well.
And my other question as well is like, where do you see your work now going forward?
Yeah, I think I kind of see it more as community based, really, with explaining to people about you know, taking people out and seeing these trees. Like it's good doing this online, but it would be so much better to be actually going around and saying, right, here you are, there's you know, there's a really beautiful yew tree in Central Park, and then people can draw and photograph them as they wish. And yeah, I mean, with my actual artwork, that's always been an issue for me, what to do with it. Do I do, because I studied illustration, but then that was at a master's level, not at an undergraduate level, so I don't really know the basics of illustration, you know, like, well, how to take that forward. But also, so I could make books and sell prints and stuff like that, but then it could also be that the images are really big images that are at an exhibition on the, you know, like on their own, but then I don't know, it's just, then I'll just kind of,
I remember hearing about illustration, is that illustration can be basically anything which is kind of portraying something with a line. Is that like, that's kind of what I've heard. So I think walking and lines is very much joining things together, isn't it? So that is like a type of, you're like illustrating the story of trees to get conceptual about it. But and also, my name's not A Barlow. My friend has obviously logged into my Zoom. It's Helen. I'm from Inner City Seeds, so I do lots of gardening and that kind of thing. Yes, well, hopefully you will do some walks, because I'd like to go on them.
Yeah, it's lovely to see you, Helen, as well. Thank you for coming along to this. But yeah, it would be really good. I'd love to do that. I think there's so many levels you could do it on, like either the mental health side of things, people going along and just bringing some food and flasks of tea and just enjoying a day together, and you know, doing a bit of meditation with the trees, or it could be an art thing where people are drawing the trees, or a mythology thing, or maybe a bit of both, you know. So yeah, so it's interesting to see how it go. But yeah, but it's interesting that you can find all the trees apart from reed, which I'm sure is in Central Park, because there are some bits of like water parts down towards the willow trees at the bottom. But that's the only thing I really couldn't find. And mistletoe, I haven't got that in my calendar that I designed either. But probably there somewhere on an apple tree. But yeah, all of the trees were found. I could find them in Central Park, so it's just interesting. And all the trees that you go when you walk through Marder Way, there's so many different trees there as well, right up towards the Hoe. And it's shocking what they're doing with the trees.
We've got a question actually that kind of follows on from what you've just said there. I think we'll make this our final question just for now, but Mark has put a question into the chat to say, how much do you think that the planning of Central Park took into the account the variety of trees and kind of representing the trees of these traditions that you've been speaking about? it sounds like you say, that you found nearly all of them in this one park.
Yeah.
So do you think that was taken into account perhaps when they were sort of planning the
I
planting?
don't know. Central Park is it was old farmland. So you've got a lot of things, a lot of trees that would be found, in that kind of environment. So you would find hawthorn and blackthorn and hazel and holly and possibly oak. So a lot of these trees would be found like that anyway. But then finding Scots pine, and there's also white poplar. So I guess there is an awful lot of different trees in Central Park, because the Victorian age, they were trying to make parks more kind of exotic, and so they were planting trees that were more exotic to look at. So you've got your bog standard trees, and then you've got weird and wonderful ones as well in there that are that you think, oh, what's that tree, and you look it up on like a tree app or something, and it comes up something that's from out in Mongolia, or what. So they're planting all sorts of different ones. So I don't know. I think they're probably left over, a lot of them, from what it was before, especially the far end where Pounds Park is around. There's the way you go through, and you can actually see it looks like there's lots of stone path where the pathways are, and then there's stone walls, and they're like really old stone walls and stuff like that. So that is kind of the older parts there. And then you've got bits where Pounds Park is where they've made it a lot of exotic trees that are amongst the yew trees as well. And it's a bit of a mishmash, really. But it's nice that you can find them all anyway in there, in the inner city, and throughout Plymouth city centre and around the outskirts, and that you can find a lot of interesting trees as well. So and the trees that I found in this calendar. Does that answer that at all? Sorry, Mark. I hope that's all right.
We've got a thumbs up from Mark. That's great.
That's
Thank
good.
you so much, Nicola. It's honestly been so fascinating. I think I've definitely learned a lot just from hearing about all these connections to this calendar and beyond. It seems like so many of these things have so many more wider connections than we might first think. So.
Oh, thank you. Sorry that the presentation was a bit dodgy. I just
No,
couldn't get
not
it
at
to
all.
show the notes on the side, so I kind of had to have them up at the same time, and then I was trying to read them at the same time. So sorry.
Okay, no, not a problem. So I'm just conscious of the time. So what we'll do is we'll crack on with our second presentation. Thank you so much, Nicola. So our second speaker of the day, we have Jessie Tam, who is going to be talking about the struggling artist. So without further ado, I will hand over to Jessie. Thank you so much.
Hello. Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Nicola, for having such a fascinating presentation. Maybe I can start with introducing myself. I'm Jessie, and I'm from Hong Kong. I'm an artist, and I work with a lot of ready-made objects, also unwanted materials, and I also deal with a lot of power relations in our lives, such as intimate relationship, but also in a social and political context. I made works about human feelings, and I also work with a lot of inanimate objects or entities. For example, I was working with geese in the park about asking them if they can be friends with me, to talk about displacement and being away from home, but also collecting some house fragments and turning some of the plaster fragment into an eyeball and inviting them to visit the house that is turned into something else that we cannot recognize. And today I'm happy to share with you the project Struggling Artist. And in this project, actually, I take the role as an assistant or an agent, as this is a project that is co-presented by a group of mimes. I call them mimes in the art world. And today I'm happy to have one of the mimes, art student Mimi, to come with me. So maybe I can let art student Mimi introduce herself.
Hello, I'm art student Mimi, and I'm happy to be in Huddle. And I heard from Jessie that we are having a sharing session about struggling artists. And actually, this is a project that I work with other Mimis in the art world. And I guess maybe Jessie can help me share my screen and we can share some slides with you about the project.
Yeah. So in this project, I work with the Mimi, and let me share my screen. So in this sharing, I will talk about the project, but sometimes I will also let art student Mimi to share some of her viewpoints and with you. So yeah, as we said, it's a project by several Mimis, and in this screen you can see we have artist Mimi. She's taking a photo in front of a background written stars in the sky. Some are seen, some are not seen. This is one of part of the work of a struggling artist, and why we introduced this work first, because it is the curse of the project, and it is the curse of the art world, which means artists are like stars in the sky. Some of them are recognized and some of them are not seen. More like how resources are allocated, and sometimes artists who make good work, but maybe they don't have opportunities. And in this screen, you can see struggling artists with curator Mimi. And this is the second Mimi of the art world, of the Mimi's art world. And the third one is collector Mimi. Here, collector Mimi is taking photo with a trash bin, and the trash bin is a plastic container that contains some of the leftover of the struggling artist project. And coming next is art writer Mimi. She is a Mimi in the art world that helps a lot with article writing, but also exhibition and curatorial statement. And the last one is art student Mimi. So after introducing all of the Mimis, maybe art student Mimi would like to introduce the project with you.
Thank you, Jessie. First of all, thank you for introducing all the Mimis in the art world. And as you see in the screen, we have a banner or a poster, and there is a statement saying about struggling artists, who we are and what we do. We make nice things and provide consultations for art practitioners. In the beginning of the slides, you see there's a curse. Artists are seen sometimes and sometimes they are not seen. This is a project inspired when I was a bachelor student. After the graduation, I witnessed some of my peers. They make very good work, but they are not picked up by some maybe curators or galleries or art space. So it is a project that started with such simple questions. And when I was studying my master in the Netherlands, which is painting, I didn't expect my graduation work is about the art system again. So because of some of the failures, such as like open code and applications, as an artist, I guess we have to deal with a lot of failures and rejections. Sometimes we write proposals, but we are not chosen. So I was trying to deal with a lot of failures, but also questions as an artist, how to deal with the art system that is quite competitive, and how to face my desire, my fear, and some of the negative emotions that is triggered by the art world. So as you see, this is one of the work, and this is one of the work about struggling artists. And at that time, we were trying to collect a lot of failures, and we wait for peers to start some conversations. And in those conversations, I discovered that sometimes I got help and advice from people, and I collect a lot of calls to deal with some of the failures. And this is artist Mimi, who is waiting in the struggling artist project that takes up a consultation office as the form. And you can see in the screen, we got a mirror. And how we deal with the struggles in the art world is to make a series of spells to deal with the curse that I mentioned in the beginning. So how the spell is developed and transformed is based on different struggles and failure. So some of them is about self-doubts and also not having much confidence because of rejections that I received in the art world. So I was asking my friend, and my friend was saying, "Don't be stupid." So I made 2 mirrors and engraved words on it about "Don't be stupid." So it became a spell that we can use in daily life. As mirror, we can look at ourselves. Whenever we have self-doubts, we can look at it and be assured of ourselves. And coming next, you see a towel. This is another spell that I was using to deal with another struggle. And written on the towel is "I am bad enough," as sometimes I believe by admitting ourselves we can be bad, or we are not good enough, or we are not okay, we can try to deal with the negative self. And below such spell is some worksheet for open core failure. And at that time, Jessie is helping us to in the exhibition space to invite audience to talk with us. And after the graduation show, we try to make a video about some elements of struggling artists, but also conversations between those mimes. So I would like to share with you a video about struggling artists, and you will see artist Mimi making some sort of speech. I have to be young to make it, and it all started with the anxiety of how to become an artist. I smiled in a white coupe space with a glamorous grey cement floor, looking at the camera. All behind is my artworks. I'm doing a solo exhibition, sitting on a chair, and around me is my artwork. There's my name, Mimi. I'm in a video with a good-looking hair and doing an interview with a professional face, answering things in a poetic get-to-know manner. I don't need to be very worried about having nothing in my CV because I have a long list of awards, residency, solos, exhibitions, interviews, and publications. I was once an art student with not much on my CV. You know, there are exhibitions at school that makes it longer. When I'm making an artwork, what am I making for? It is blended with a personal need, but I also an exhibition or an assignment to be completed. Filling in the gaps and empty space of CV is part of making art, or I will make things very handy just for fun. What we are now seeing in this black and white task is a long time of waiting mixed with anxiety and loss of confidence when we are not picked up. Artists are stars in the sky, some are seen, some are not seen. I learned to be an artist, and I was told to go to openings, so my face can be recognized and people remember me, for I may get the chance of having an exhibition. I have things on my hand, but I look at the things that people have on their hands. I look at people who can go to openings all the time and letting go of their work for a while. I felt guilty for not going, but I miss the time I have with myself. There are a lot of tips and books that teach us how to become an artist in their early career. However, there is not much book about how to become a bad artist and fail. Failure seems to be an easy subject to stand out, but I do not think so, because not many dare to show something bad. Art is about beauty, and art is about what is art. When we are reading tips of how to behave in a gallery opening, building a network, creating a profile that looks professional and making ourselves to be seen, what are we reading and what are we losing? What will we get and what will we lose? Thank you.
Thank you, art student Mimi, for sharing with us the project of struggling artist. And I hope you enjoy the first part. And coming next is I would like to introduce also some development of struggling artists. Yeah, and I like to share my screen again. So Struggling Artist is a project I work with the Mimis in the art world as a graduation project. And because of its aim to deal with and look at failures instead of aiming for success or questioning about success and perfection, working as an art practitioner. So we try to develop it into an art space that we can work with peers or art workers to think more about resources allocation. And by working with other people, we try to find our positions within or without the art system. So one of the recent projects that Struggling Art Space developed is a group show called May the Art World Tear Us Apart Till We Meet Again. As Struggling Art Space is a space that that is founded by me and also another artist from Hong Kong, Tingy. So we got two co-founders, and after the graduation show, we got invited by Biruma School, an exhibition space and residency program art space in the Netherlands. They were inviting us to have a dual exhibition about struggling artists. And we were thinking, if it's about struggling artists and we got such a big space, maybe we can extend it into a group show that involved more people. So at that time, I was working with curator Mimi. So we together and curated this exhibition that involved 12 artists in total. And how this exhibition works is that I was at that time I was collecting and talking with a lot of peers, and I discovered some of the conversations were about struggles, especially in art making, but also worries as an artist that is not being chosen or not having much opportunities. So I try to think of those conversations, and in total, I discovered there were 12 conversations about struggles. So I called them struggling conversations. And because this is a dual exhibition, so we got money and funding for just 2 artists. So I was trying to invite 12 artists, and by allocating each artist some artist fee, we try to work on 12 struggling questions, which I developed from those 12 struggling conversations, and those struggling questions become 12 struggling works that is presented in a visual form, but also in written text. For example, this is one of the work by artist Kimi Tam from Hong Kong. In this work, she's trying to make a goddess where people or the audience can make wishes with it. And another work is a work called A Failed Flight Attempt by Ray, another artist from Taiwan. And the struggling questions I asked her is, how do you deal with how do we get lost in art making? So by asking this artist 12 struggling questions, we try to figure out how we can deal with all of the struggles. For example, this is an artwork by Fa, another artist from Hong Kong, and the work is called The Imagined Bread Cafe. The question I asked her is, how can we believe in art and how can we not believe in art making? And by responding to this question, Fa made a bread cafe, which is formed by 3 fake bread made by cotton and fabric. And by creating a cafe that is in between, like a fake one, but also a real one, she tries to find comfort. And finding comfort is one of her response to a lot of struggles she encountered in art making, which triggered her to think about sometimes how can we believe in it. And for this one is Blackout Envelope by Rosalie, another Hong Kong artist. By the time I was asking her a question about how artists work 24/7, which means how can we work like continue to work and to deal with the labor condition as an artist. So by thinking of this question, Rosalie made a series of envelope, and she tried to make it without taking a rest. So in total, she made 47 in 24 hours. And some of the artists respond to the artists. They make work to talk about the struggling questions, but they also, each of them, I invited them to write a test. So all of the tests are included in such a booklet, which is also called May the Art World Tear Us Apart Till We Meet Again. And this is art writer Mimi in the exhibition space. And you can see those 12 questions, such as how to know I will become famous one day, how to resist an invitation from a gallery, how to wait for a better art space to work with, how not to get lost in the game of becoming a famous artist, how to work 24/7 as an art maker, how to gather as artists, how to believe in art, how not to, and how to make use of my role as an artist in society, how to look at failure, how to remember, how to be remembered and how to be forgotten, and how to feel at ease and content, how to have a happy life. So these are some questions generated in those conversations with different peers, but they also appear quite common to different art practitioners. And apart from curating the group exhibition in the Roma School, we also curated exhibitions in different art space. And for this one is once again in one's hand, an exhibition we curated in a secondhand shop in Groningen, the Netherlands. Since struggling art space, we don't have a physical space, so the nature is quite mobile. Sometimes we write proposals for some art space, but also space that is not for art exhibitions. Sometimes we also work with artists to curate exhibition together. And sometimes we also had workshop in art institution. And for this one is when herbs come together, how bitter we can go. Is part of the training program of Constitute Melly in Rotterdam. And by introducing herbal tea from Hong Kong, we try to share how we can find comfort, but also try how to take care of ourselves while making art. This is one of the publications of struggling artists, which is encountering, capturing, chasing little moments, I gonna lose it, which is a magazine about art making as a gesture that collects a lot of fragments of daily lives, but also about how to let go of moments or how to keep it in art making. And because we also have, since we have a lot of publications, so sometimes we also participate in scene festival, such as Scene Camp in warm Rotterdam, but also Spread Scene Festival in Groningen to connect with different audience and art maker. And we are coming to the end of the presentation. And this is the website of Struggling Art Space, where you can find a lot of our projects. And in 2023, we are going to join the art fair for non-commercial art space in Sweden, which is Supermarket. And I hope you like our presentation. And thank you. Oh,
Great. Thank you so much, Jessie. That was so fascinating
Thank
to hear
you.
about your project.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank
I hope
you.
you enjoy it, and feel free to ask any questions if you have.
Well, I know that there's one message that got popped in the chat by Mark, and he said that the questions that you were asking as part of your project feel like a lot of the questions that so CAMP, as we are an artist network for people in Devon and Cornwall, and we ask a lot of the same questions. And I think it sounds as if these questions are universal across anyone who is an artist or is a maker. You know, how can we address these things, and how can we come together as well? I feel like there's a lot of feelings of togetherness in your work, so it feels very supportive.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, and thank you for reading the message. And yeah, I guess as an art maker, we try to figure out the problems or things that trigger us, such as life's realities that we question a lot. And by asking universal question, I guess we can find shared experience, and we can also invite people to join as part of the conversation. And I still remember in the exhibition period, a lot of people also comment they find such a question is quite what they are also thinking a lot when they are making art, but also in their lives. So the exhibition was in the Netherlands, and I hope in the coming future we can have other opportunities that we can make the show happen one more time, so more audience can approach the questions together. And it's also one of the form that struggling art space is always adapting or adopting, because like by asking questions, we consider them as some of the struggle and question, and we try to react on it or deal with it by an art form, which is an artwork. And we also try to make publications to let people understand more of the artwork. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Did anybody else have any questions for Jessie? I've got a question that's just popped in the chat from Irene. Thank you for sharing, Irene. It says, fascinating and charming project. Thank you so much for sharing. Where in the Netherlands did you do your studies?
Thank you. I was doing my studies in Groningen, which is a city. I like it for a lot of secondhand shops, and I was doing a painting program. But it's quite interesting because when I applied for the program at the art school is Frank Moore Institute, which is part of the Minerva Art Academy. And when I was applying for the program, I was doing some paintings, but in my art practice, which is quite multidisciplinary, and I work with different medium like video performance, but also drawing, installation, and sculpture sometimes. And when I was doing the master program, I didn't do a lot of canvas painting, but the training itself inspired me to work on installation as if a painting. So in the struggling artist project, I think I adopt some elements which is quite eye-catching as part of it. And I was in the program, I didn't focus a lot of canvas painting, but instead I follow a lot of daily lives fragments, such as the geese project I was talking about, because at that time I just left Hong Kong while Hong Kong was in political turmoil and movement, and I was pointing at some geese in the park by saying I want to eat geese noodles, which is a quite famous dishes in Hong Kong. But my friend was saying that it was quite brutal. So I took this story into my heart, and by asking them befriend okay, and the befriend okay is a letter I made out of veggies to deal with to explore the violence in relationship, but also displacement. So there are different series of work. I also worked in a Chinese restaurant, and I made some work about how to tangle with a vacuum cleaner and how to fly like a fly. Cleaning is to wait for the dust to come. All this kind of project to think about working and labor as a condition of human. Yeah. But only after graduation, I start to make paintings again. Thank you, Irene, for asking such a question.
Thank you. Were there any other questions? Feel free to turn your audio on and speak, or if you'd like to put them in the chat, you can do that as well. You kind of almost answered one of the questions that I had, Jessie, was kind of what was your practice before kind of looking at the struggling artist? But you just mentioned there that you started to make paintings again, which is really lovely. Is that where you can see your work going, or is it do you have different focuses at different times about, you know, making work and then also looking back at that process of labor and working with other people?
Yeah, thank you. When I was working on the project, in the beginning, I didn't realize the aim or the concept of it. For example, for the GIS project, I was only trying to write them a letter in the beginning, but in the process, the GIS was from the beginning. I wrote them letters with cauliflower leaves, and they didn't like it. But the question I asked them is, "Be friend, okay?" So they were ignoring me. So I guess the reply is no. And another time I was bringing some carrots to them, and it was quite a chaotic process at night. So turn out in the end I want to say sorry to them because of the chaos. So I made a letter with sorry written with Roman letters, and they were looking at it and even smelling and kicking it a bit. So I guess they accept my apology. And yeah, all this kind of, I made this different art project by following my instinct and also things that happened around me. And only in the end, I figure out why I am doing it. So for example, in this GIS project, I was thinking only after several months or 1 month, I make it, and it was about violence, about displacement, and about the geese, they could not go back after eating bread as a response or reflections of what was happening in my home place, that we could not go back to something we used to have it. And for painting itself, I work with a lot of secondhand fabric, and for my paintings, I like to have them as a coupling setting, but also I write in paintings. I put a lot of intimate feelings and also quotes or sentence in painting by putting very intimate aspect of my life in such a public medium. I try to question about the line between intimacy, but also about public, and how I develop paintings into other my art project is that I have a lot of words engraved on different things, such as ready-made objects, but also drawing. And in my upcoming and my first solo exhibition in Hong Kong, it has to be alone. A project about the eyeball I was mentioning, an eyeball made from a plaster fragment from a house renovation site I collected in the Netherlands. The eyeball was a plaster, and I discovered it in a site in a trash bin, and it was having blue droplets on its surface, and I associated it as crying, and crying, which means it missed its old home and got abandoned or by it. And I imagined it become an eyeball and visiting the old home that became something else as a response to my home place also become something that I could no longer recognize. And in this story I have been developing it for 3 years, and it was a spatial installation, but until the upcoming solo, I am developing it into a series of 9 household fragments. They are all formed by different unwanted materials that is like items we have in the house or home, like window, curtain, a mirror, and a doorway. And all of these objects I engraved words on it, and each of the household items, they have some monologue. And what they're doing is to try to create some attitude that is not welcoming the eyeball to visit. So I use different methods to engrave words on it, such as sculpting, but also drawing and writing. So I guess it's how painting is adopted in my art project. Thank you.
That's so interesting to see how that you work a lot with language, clearly, and how that kind of carries across in each of these different modes that you use in your work. It's really, really fascinating. Thank you. We also had another comment from Irene saying thank you for your answer. She's currently feeling a bit poorly, so can't put her microphone on, but it's interesting. She wondered if you'd ever studied in Minerva, as she used to live in, forgive the pronunciation, Leeuwarden. So
it's so close.
That's amazing, all these connections coming.
Yeah.
And how, yeah, even from, you know, sitting at our computers, wherever we're sitting, there are always these connections that we can make with each other.
Yeah, it's so cool. I'm glad that we can connect with one another by like sitting here and like having conversations and discussion.
Wonderful, thank you. I will open up the floor one last time for any further questions or comments. But in the meantime, I just wanted to extend my thanks to you, Jessie, and also to Nicola, who sadly had to leave a little earlier. But thank you so much for your fascinating presentations. For anyone who has been watching, this recording will be made available on CAMP's website, so you can watch again. But equally, you can watch all of our previous huddles as well. So any that have happened throughout this project, you can go back and watch on CAMP's website. And I can also make sure that there are details about everyone's projects as well. So if you want to read more about the struggling artist, all of those links will be available on CAMP's website. So you can look a little bit further into Jessie's work and also into Nicola's as well. Lovely, I'm getting loads of thank yous in the chat. Thank you so much. It's been really great to see you all and to hear from you all. And hopefully we will cross paths again in the future. Thank you all so much for joining us today for our very final huddle. It's been wonderful to see you all. Take care, everybody. Thank you, and we'll see each other all again soon. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye.